All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our July webinar on mastering data analysis tools in Acumatica. A quick introduction before we start. I'm Brady Bloomer, a solutions consultant here at SVA Consulting. Joining me today are my colleagues Kaylee, a pre-sales and implementation consultant, and Tanya, our customer success manager. For those of you who are new to our webinar series, we encourage you to ask questions in the Zoom chat, which Tanya will help monitor as we go throughout our presentation and demo today. And then any questions that we do not get the opportunity to answer in the moment, we'll address at the end of our time. For those of you returning, welcome back. And let's get into today's agenda. So first, today what we're going to go through is some of the core data analysis tools in Acumatica. Then we're going to talk through some of the advanced data analysis options that we have in our three-part webinar series that we're leading, with today being the first part. Kaylee and myself will walk you through a live demo of some of the core Acumatica tools that we can use to leverage data. And then at the end, we'll address those questions and we'll discuss next steps in our upcoming webinars. For our core tools that we're able to leverage in Acumatica, we really want to highlight three areas today. Starting with our generic inquiries, which is that list view of data in Acumatica that really serves as the basis for a lot of things that we can do, including pivot tables, including side panels, dashboards, which Kaylee and I will show you today in our live demo. Speaking of dashboards, we will walk through those as well. So leveraging some of the visual tools that help people understand data a little bit better, and discussing some of the widgets that we can place on dashboards, some of the purpose behind why dashboards are so effective, as well as our side panels and how we can leverage side panels for efficiency in the system as we're on a generic inquiry and having that easy accessibility to drill down into different areas of the system. Kaylee, anything you would like to add to our generic inquiries, dashboards, and side panels?
No, I think you covered it. We'll get a lot more in depth as we go through the live demonstration portion.
All right. Perfect. So as I mentioned, today is the first part of a three-part webinar series on data analysis with Acumatica. Part one will really focus on the tools at your disposal within Acumatica. Part two, we're going to be bringing in the SVA data analytics and visualization team to show you how additional systems can be leveraged for more advanced visualization that we can embed in Acumatica. And part three will be to cover a powerful tool in Acumatica with Velixo, and that seamless Excel-based reporting on real-time Acumatica data if we license the Velixo tool. With that, we can jump into today's demo with Kaylee and myself. I will jump out of the PowerPoint here and get right into Acumatica. So specifically today, what we will spend most of our time on is this customer view dashboard. And on our dashboard here, you can see we're analyzing a few pieces of information for sales analysis. And we have several different widgets, which Kaylee will walk us through as she highlights some of the dashboard features. But what we have been asked, Kaylee and myself, as some of the members of the analytics team of this company, is to put together a widget that looks similar to our top 10 sold items in the last 12 months, but they want to be able to analyze from a sales side the top 10 largest states for sales. So we're going to provide them a chart that gives them that data in a visual format. And being asked to perform this task, what I would like to first do in this process is to identify what is this generic inquiry that's already out there for my top 10 sold items, and what might I have to add to it or change to be able to give them that information on sales by state. So with that, your dashboards are drilled down. And so I can click the title of my dashboard. It's actually going to open up a new tab for me with the data behind that visualization. And so right away from here, just a quick overview from what I'm seeing on my invoiced items generic inquiry is some information on the customer of this invoice, the dates of these invoices, as well as further information on the invoice, including the reference number and the type of that invoice, the items that have landed on this invoice and some information within those items as well. And then I have some statistics here for cost, price, profitability of this invoice. And so I'm not seeing any direct information on the geographical aspects of these invoices. So I know that I'm going to have to go in here and add that information. To be able to edit this generic inquiry and add that information, I'm going to come right into my customization tool. And with the proper permissions on my user, I can edit this generic inquiry. It's going to pull up the back end of this generic inquiry, or GI, in Acumatica, where I can take a look at the tables that are being used to provide the data, what relations exist for these tables, and how are we joining them together, any sorting or grouping that exists. We can double check the results to make sure that what we saw is what is being put into this generic inquiry. And then myself and Kaylee will go through some other features like adding side panels to the generic inquiry, as well as adding a parameter to the top to the generic inquiry. But to start, I know that I have to add in this address information to my generic inquiry. And so I'm going to need an additional table. But what I have to ask myself internally is, what table do I have to add to my GI here? And there's a couple ways you can do this. You don't always have to, nor will you probably always know the direct table that you have to add to your generic inquiries. And so some of the best ways to do that is to go into the source of that data and find that table and find those field names that you will have to add. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this generic inquiry back up by clicking View Inquiry. And I'm going to hyperlink into one of my invoices. All right, so it's going to pop that up in a new window and make that full screen for me. And I know that I have to add some geographical information on their address. So I'm going to jump into their address tab of my invoice screen. And again, with the proper permissions on my user, I'm able to look up what the table name and the field name is for the data that I am looking to add to my generic inquiry, which in this case, for the ask of my VP of sales, I want to add in the state. And so a simple Control-Alt highlights that state for me, where then I can click on it and examine my element properties. And so I know here the tables that I'm looking at, as well as the data field name. Right, same goes with if I need to look at my billing states for that information. Right, again, my table name is right here, and my state name is right there. I'm sorry, my field name for the state is right there. So now with that information, I know what table I have to add to my generic inquiry. So I'm going to jump back into that screen. I'm going to go into those data sources and add my table. I can add my table by hand by typing in that table name. But in addition to doing it that route and manually joining those, I want to leverage some of Acumatica's abilities to make this process a little bit easier. And so highlighting the table that I want to join with, and in this case, that's going to be my AR invoice table. I can select the Add Related Table button, and it's actually going to form those joins for me, depending on the table and the fields that I'm looking to join it by. And so you'll see here suggestions on several tables and several joins that are possible with my AR invoice parent table. But I know the one that I'm looking for is AR address. And in this case, I want to specifically pull the shipping address. And so highlighting that row here, selecting my related table, puts that join into my generic inquiry, and all I simply have to do is press add. As soon as I've added that, we can go and take a look at my relations. We can see that join that was put into my generic inquiry. You can see right now it is an inner join. So still double clicking this, I'm able to adjust my joins as we go. And potentially I want to make this a left join. You can also see based on the row that I selected when I was creating this join, that it is grabbing my shipping address from my invoice and setting it equal to the address on my AR address table. I'm going to save this information. So now I've brought this address information into my generic inquiry, but I have to leverage those fields to put them as a column on my GI. And so that's where I'm going to go back to my results grid. And we're going to add in some rows here. And so taking a look at what's already being used, we know from that first glance that what I'm looking at is some of the invoice information, some of the customer information, the item information, and now I want to add the state information. And so what I can do is just select add row. I have to tell it which table I'm looking to grab the data from. So I'm looking at my AR address table now. And then you have a drop down of all of your fields within the AR address table. And so maybe for the sake of providing a little bit extra detail, I want to include the postal code. I also want to include the state. So I'm going to just type that and select that one. And lastly, I'm going to include the country. So I've now added those three fields to my generic inquiry by joining that table in. In addition to how I found those field names, going back into the source of that data being the invoice, you can also take a look at what are all the available fields within a table of Acumatica by selecting your source hyperlink here and opening up your DAC schema browser. So in here, you'll see all of those field names with their type and display names as well. So 2 different ways that can help you find those field names that you're looking for. All right. Before I go any further, I want to make sure that this data looks the way I want it to. And so I'm going to view the inquiry again and just take a look at some of that information that I added. All right, I know because of where I put it on my results grid that it's going to be in the last couple columns. All right, and you can see that I have my postal codes, my states, and my countries added now as columns to my generic inquiry. The last thing I want to demonstrate before I kick it off to Kaylee to help build this dashboard that we've been tasked of is how to add a parameter to this generic inquiry so that as I look at my data here, I can filter down by potentially state as well and exclude any of the states that I haven't put in my parameter. And so I'm going to go back to this generic inquiry that I'm working on. I'm going to start in my parameters tab and give my parameter a name. We'll add this. I'm not going to require it. I'm going to call it state. What field am I looking to populate this with? And again, I know that I'm looking for the AR address state, but again, you might have to go through those steps of finding that if you are unsure. The display name is the name that appears when we look at our generic inquiry on the user interface. And so again, I'm just going to call it state for simplicity purposes, but you can expand on that. And the last thing I want to do is I want to be able to select from a list that Acumatica has for my states. And so I'm going to click from schema. You have the option to default a value in for our states. In this case, I do not need to default a value in, and I'll leave it open for the user to then go in and select which state they want to populate. So that's the first half of adding a parameter. Now I have to make this parameter work. And so I have to go into my conditions box. From here, I have to tell the generic inquiry how to operate when we populate this parameter. So I'm going to add a few rows here. My data field, again, this is going to be my AR address state field. And I want that to equal my parameter. Or if my parameter is empty, I don't want to restrict my generic inquiry. I want to see all of the data still. So that's where I'm going to select or my parameter is empty. We'll close these in brackets and save my condition statement. Now when viewing my generic inquiry, I have my parameter that I built. I'm going to scroll to the right. We can see our varying states here in our list of data. I'm going to go through and I'm going to select Florida in my parameter. And you can now see it is conditionally filtering this on the state that I put in my parameter. And so it is only looking at the Florida data now. I think that'll be a helpful tool for my VP of sales as he drills down into his widget that we're going to provide for him. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Kaylee to show you some of the tools with filtering these even further, and then using those filters and the options that we have for widgets to add a widget to our dashboard.
Perfect. Thank you, Brady. Go ahead and share my screen. All right, is everyone able to see this?
Yep, looks good, Kaylin.
Perfect. All right. All right, so just picking up where Brady left off, rather. So I'm looking at the same generic inquiry that Brady just built for us, and you can see that AR address field, or table rather, is added in there. So I'll go ahead and just view this inquiry. And it's going to give us that similar view that we've been working with. You'll see the parameter that Brady created at the top as well. All right. With this, our VP of Sales asked that we provide a dashboard view of the breakdown of profitability by state. So looking at those top profitable states in the year 2024. So before I go ahead and create that dashboard view, I'm going to go ahead and create a filter just within the generic inquiry. I could do it either here or within the dashboard. So I'll show maybe both options, but starting off within this GI view, I'm just going to go ahead and filter this invoice date. We'll use these dynamic filters and we'll go is between year start and year end. I'll go ahead and save that. And then one last snippet. I'm going to go ahead and just filter this to be not empty. If they forgot to fill in a state, we don't necessarily want that. So this is the data that will be feeding my dashboard. You can see the records there, and then we'll display this in a dashboard view. I'll make sure to save that filter. Just so I can use that as the basis for my dashboards as well. So we'll see all records and then that filter I created on the GI. All right, with that, I'll go back to my home screen, which is that customer view dashboard we saw early on. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually create the widget to display within the dashboard. So again, here's my dashboard view. If I have the correct access rights, I'll go ahead and press design. Once I do that, I'm in this dashboard design mode. So I can edit any widgets that are currently on my dashboard. If I maybe didn't want this view anymore, to replace that, I could delete it. In this case, I'll keep it and then just add an additional widget for the specific information we're wanting to present. I'll do that by clicking add new widget. We're going to be creating a chart view today, but just a note on the different types of data you can display in a dashboard. So we can have different data tables, an embedded page, KPI stacks like the ones we see up here, links to different resources. And then this is kind of a preface of maybe our next webinar as well. But Acumatica does natively integrate with Power BI. So if that's a more advanced data analysis tool that your team is using, those can still be leveraged and then brought in and displayed on the Acumatica dashboard as well. So I won't get into that today, but just know that that is upcoming in our next series, or in our next webinar of the series. All right, so I'll go ahead and click chart, click next, and this widget is just going to walk me through. It's kind of a dashboard wizard that's going to easily walk me through the next steps of creating this specific view. So as we discussed, we saw in that slide deck, the inquiries are all the basis of these dashboard views. So Brady just created that specific inquiry for me to use. So that's created already, but just remember any of those views that you're creating can feed your dashboards in a variety of ways. So I'll go ahead and search for the inquiry he created called invoice items. Oops, I might have spelled that wrong. There we go. Select that new one. And then here is where I can add a manual filter, or I can select one of the filters I created already. So I'll go ahead, let's see here. I'll go ahead and create that filter as well. So I could select one I had created and saved and shared on that inquiry view, or I can create a similar one here as well. So I'll go ahead and say, let's see here, invoice date. is between. And then I'll go ahead and do year start and year end. So both options, you can create it on the inquiries, share that setting, save that filter and use it for your dashboards, or manually create the same filter at the time of creating that dashboard view as well. One more setting or filter rather that I'll save is just, again, we don't want that state to be empty. So if for any reason it is empty, we don't want it displaying on our dashboard because that wouldn't be as relevant to us. All right, I'll go ahead and press save. And then I'm going to caption this 2024 profitability by state. And then we're going to really configure what we want in the chart. So different chart types. In this case, we'll do kind of that donut chart, but recognizing those different chart types we can add as well. So a funnel might be a good chart for a CRM side to track opportunities, for example. Line chart we have above, as well as a column chart. So whatever types of charts you can add, you would select within this configuration window pop-up. On the legend, we want to have the state itself. So I'll go ahead and select state. We're going to max at 10. We don't necessarily want too much data in this. We just kind of want to see those top profitable states. So we'll max it out at 10 states. I'm going to say show the sum of those. And then the value that we want to look at is that estimated profit. And we can format what we want that to look like as well. And then this is going to show me by state the profit we have on those states in the year 2024. So go ahead and press save. We'll finish that. And we'll see it pop up. It's pretty teeny. So we can obviously adjust that as well within this dashboard designer tool. Maybe I want that to be pretty big. So I can make that bigger, adjust that size there. And then we're really going to see that breakdown. So I'll get out of this design mode so we can see what that looks like. So there we have the 2024 profitability by state. And then we also have that breakdown. So you'll see Wisconsin is a big profitable state so far this year, followed by California, New York, Illinois, and Florida. So there it's going to just give me that overview look of that profitability by state. And remember, as we saw before, we can drill down into any section of this. So if I wanted to just look at Wisconsin, for example, it's going to auto filter that for that top profitable state, only those invoices this year from those states. So we can see kind of that breakdown of it. I'll click out of that. I'm going to go click on this header, which is going to give me that full breakdown by state. And then we can begin to add additional information at your disposal. So there we'll see the invoiced items. It's going to show me that breakdown just of those states that made up that chart. And let's say the next step here we want, so we presented this maybe in draft form to that VP of sales. They really liked what they saw, but they said, you know what, as we drill down into that, we can't really see additional data without drilling down into that reference number, for example, or we can't just see that printed invoice form that went out to customers unless we drill down into it. So that is when we would start to add and display side panels to a generic inquiry to show that information right at their disposal pretty efficiently without having to click into each line item each time. So with that, I'll go ahead and create the side panel view. So I'm going to go back into my generic inquiry that we had open over here, the one Brady has been working with. And then this is really where we'll add those side panels as well. So a lot of work happening within this kind of page view to build that generic inquiry, build that side panels, a lot of the behind the scenes work to display that for key members of the organization. So I have all of the data that I need, but in terms of navigation, I want to add a few navigation targets, including the side panel. So we already have one which will break down customer information, but really I want to see a breakdown of those invoice details and then a breakdown or rather a view of that printed document as well. So I'll do that by adding in a navigation target. And then this is where I'll start to search as well. So in this case, I do know what I'm looking for. I'll start to search invoices. In this case, I'm looking at the sales order invoices. So I'll go ahead and select that transaction category. And it's going to auto-populate to have that in the same tab. In this case, I want to have it in a side panel. So this is where, in creating side panels, you would make sure that window mode is set to side panel. Once I do that, I'll add some fields and parameters that I want to view in that side panel, including a document type and a reference number. So for that document type, I'm going to add AR invoice, and then we want to make sure it's that doc type. So it will always be .doc type. So I'll go ahead and select that. And then we also want a reference number for that AR invoice as well. So I'll go ahead and select the AR invoice.ref number. My work here isn't completely done. We'll also have the ability to add an icon. So really this is user's choice, but I will go ahead and just add, let's see, details, for example, since this will really be my invoice details that I want to display. So that's the first side panel I'll go ahead and create. Anytime I view the inquiry, we should see that side panel populate. And then I'll also add in that printed form as well. So here's my invoiced items. This is showing all of them. If I go back to my home screen or my dashboard, drill down into that newly created widget, it's going to give me that same view, but with that drill down. And in all of these, you'll see invoice details side panel has been added. So give it a second to load. And then once it does, again, the side panel view is going to allow us to have additional information into those invoice details without having to click in to the reference number itself and out of your screen. Again, for anyone who has not leveraged side panels before, as we continue to click through these different line items, the right-hand side is going to update. So again, we can kind of multitask, so to say, in terms of looking at those details and then looking at that drill down on the left-hand side. All right, but that isn't quite enough. We want to add in that printed form as a dashboard view as well. So I'm going to exit out of here, exit out of my dashboard, and then we're back into that generic inquiry builder screen. So I'll add one more navigation target. In this case, it will be that printed form. And right now we want to add in the invoice memos printed form. So that will now be the, let's see here, sales orders invoice printed form, if you saw that category on the right-hand side here, and then the side panel view of it. Again, we'll need to add those parameters. So I'll add in document type for the AR invoice. The reference number, so it's referencing that AR invoice as well. Add in my icon. Maybe we want this to be something else this time. So let's see here. Lots of options. So anyone who's bad at making decisions might actually have a hard time with this if you're like me. So let's see here. We'll go ahead and just add in maybe one that looks like a document. So let's go with we'll just go with the checkbox to make things easier for everyone. Won't put you through the pain of watching me make a decision. All right, and then we'll choose the title. So it will be invoice document. And we'll go ahead and press save. So now that we have that, it's gonna, again, dynamically find that document type and reference number on the inquiry and display that on the side panel view to the right. So again, I'll go back to my dashboard view and we'll kind of full circle it here. to my profitability by state, drill down into that. And then we'll see both of those new side panels shown on the right-hand side. So again, invoice details. And then my invoice document form as well. So it's going to show me that invoice that's actually sent out to the customer. Again, that will update. Oops, you don't need to click into it anymore. There we go. And it's going to update on the right-hand side as I navigate through the left-hand side. So that's really full circle overview of leveraging tools like generic inquiries, dashboards, and side panels. So that was a specific use case we walked through in terms of someone within the company coming to you to say, hey, we really like this specific dashboard view, but the data maybe is less relevant to us. We're really looking for that breakdown of profitability by state. So you can either, use an existing inquiry, add data to it, and use it as the basis. Everything we walked through today with the inquiries, for example, you could technically start from scratch as well. So you would be populating in multiple of those tables, as Brady showed us, not just one. But those are really kind of that overview deep dive into some of those technical data analysis tools within Acumatica. All right. With that, I will go ahead and share back out the PowerPoint, and we can wrap up with some questions and then next steps as well. All right, let me get to the right screen here. We saw these. All right. All right, Tanya, any questions in the queue at this point? Anyone who hasn't posted their questions, if you have any open ones, feel free to drop those in the chat at this time.
Questions at the moment.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so wrapping up, Brady had mentioned it. We'd mentioned it a couple times as well, just to foreshadow our series. But this was one of 3 webinar series we're doing more on the data analysis features. So actually someone just put in the chat, they want more. Good, because we have 2 more sessions. So one next month will be leveraging some more advanced tools. So we mentioned Power BI is one of them. If your company uses a tool like Power BI or wishes to use it in the future, that's definitely one that will be interesting to look at. That's really more advanced data analysis tools. And then remember, we can feed that into Acumatica dashboards as well. So we will be walking through that next time with one of our colleagues, Jacob, on our data analysis team. And then the following webinar in September will be Velixo as well. So that's connected to Acumatica. So really this is a 3-part series that you can sign up for. That QR code will lead you to the sign up form for the next webinar in August. So feel free to scan that there. There is one question in the queue. Someone asked, is it easy to share with another user once you have finished? So in terms of maybe GIs or dashboard views. Brady, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so as you finish your generic inquiry, it's just a matter of publishing it to the user interface and setting the security around it so that the appropriate users that you want to see that data can, and then those that you want to hide that data from do not see that generic inquiry. And on the dashboard side, it's going to work the same way. It'll just be a screen that is a dashboard screen. And so as you publish that to the user interface, selecting the right security around it so that the appropriate users can see those widgets. Specifically within the dashboard too, an individual might be able to see the dashboard screen, but we hide certain widgets from them. And so you have that flexibility within a dashboard as well.
Perfect. All right. Again, some wrap-up items. Any other webinars we've done in the past that maybe you haven't taken a look at yet or weren't able to attend, you can find that within our YouTube channel at SVA Consulting under the Acumatica webinars. The Acumatica community is a great place to go learn more from other users or recommend some ideas you may have in terms of Acumatica. So we definitely recommend checking that out. If you have any outstanding questions or want to talk to us about how you might leverage some of these tools additionally, feel free to contact us at contact@sva.com or tech support@sva.com, or reach out to any one of us that's been on this webinar, and we're happy to help you out as well. With that, I think we can go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all for attending today. And just one reminder is we'll send out a survey after this webinar. So this was more of a technical deep dive into some of Acumatica's elements, a little bit different than what we've done in the past. So if this is really something you're interested in and you'd like more of these types of webinars, please let us know with feedback in those surveys. All right, thank you everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.